Another one of my stories involves my grandpa and myself. See, when I was little, very little, pre-kindergarten age, we had this routine, and I'm not sure how it started. Doesn't really matter. But the whole thing was he would get up in the morning, and I would normally already be awake, but just doing something very quietly in my room. And he'd get up and he'd make a pot of coffee, and he would get his cup of coffee, and I would have to have mine too, because it was our secret that I had my cup of coffee with Grandpa. And of course, I was 4 years old. It was mostly milk and sugar with just enough of a little dab of coffee just to change the color so it looked a little bit brown. And I was so thrilled and happy because I had my coffee with Grandpa. I remember this very clearly. I had my coffee, and it was a little green cup, and there was a handle on each side of the cup, and it had a white lid with a little sipper, but this was like early 80s, like 82, 83 maybe at the latest. So it didn't have one of the non-drip or anything. It was just a lid with basically a lip on it, or a hole in the top. But I would have my cup of coffee with Grandpa in the morning, which was fine, and nobody really knew about it. Everybody just thought I was having milk in the morning. And then on my first day of kindergarten was interesting. But my first day of kindergarten, I absolutely refused to leave the house for anything until I had my cup of coffee, and nobody could figure out what I was talking about. And finally, Grandpa got up, and he made my little cup with the milk and the coffee and the sugar in it. And this went on every single day. Every day I refused to leave the house. I absolutely refused until I had my cup of coffee. And it was always Grandpa had to bring me this cup. And finally one day my dad asked, what's going on? I said, well, Dad, I'm paraphrasing here, but Dad, Grandpa told me that I couldn't grow up to be a big, strong man like you and he are unless I have my cup of coffee every morning. And my dad, being the wonderfully patient man that he is, sat down with this little 4-year-old girl and explained very calmly and very carefully that you can't be a big, strong man anyway because you don't have the right parts for it. And again, this is early 80s. You don't talk about trans, you don't talk about gay, you don't talk about any of this thing, especially with a small child. And I sat there and I listened very carefully. Okay. And he finally asked me, do you understand what I'm telling you? I looked at him, I said, yes. I can't grow up to be a big, strong man. But that just means I'm going to have to grow up to be just like Scarlet. As in Scarlet from the G.I. Joe cartoons that I was obsessed with. And I hopped down off of my bed and ran off to go play, and I could hear him face palming as I left the room. But that is the short story of my morning cup of coffee, and that's actually the beginning of my coffee obsession.